Hello. Good evening. Welcome to the December 9, 2013 City Council Successor Agency, the Redevelopment Agency, City of San Carlos Council meeting. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next item on the agenda, changes to the order of the agenda. Any changes tonight? Staff?
No changes from staff this
Council?
evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, moving on. Item 4, council communications and announcements. Are brief items from members of the City Council regarding upcoming events or community and correspondence they have received, or, pardon me, events, well, yeah, can't even read it. That's great. In the community and correspondence that they have received. They're informational in nature, and no action will be taken on these items at this meeting. Ms. Clapper, do you have anything tonight?
Just that I thoroughly enjoyed last Friday night's Holiday Lights event with the special edition of the rain. And I don't know quite how we arranged for that to make it really seasonal, but maybe we can step it up a notch and next year have it actually be snow.
Okay. Mr. Collins?
Just one thing, I attended a Heart Board meeting last Wednesday or Thursday, and also went to the Holiday Lights event as well. And also, I'm on a housing development committee, and we had a preliminary meeting on distributing the ever-dwindling supply of housing funds that the county gets. But we're actually going to do some distribution on Thursday. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Grocott? Mr. Olbert?
Other than just to echo Councilwoman Clapper's comment about the holiday night lights, that was a lot of fun. I particularly enjoyed watching all the little kids playing in the snow, since until this week that would have been an unheard of occurrence in San Carlos.
And I was also at the Holiday Lights, although they put me on after Santa Claus, and I didn't think that was a great spot to put me, but that's okay. I'll talk to them for the next year for the mayor that maybe goes on before Santa Claus, but that's another story. Anyway, but it was a successful evening, and despite the fact that the weather was a little inclement, there were lots of people out there, and it was nice, as Mr. Olbert said, to see the young people out there, too. Item 5, council appointments and presentations. 5A, consider appointment of council ad hoc subcommittee for council chamber and ADA upgrade project. Mr. Malpe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no written report to go along with this, but as you are aware, we have an ongoing project working on a redesign and upgrades for this facility. And in order to continue working through the design phase to prepare an item to come back for council at the earliest possible time, we're asking the council to form an ad hoc subcommittee to work with staff over the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. I would suggest, and again, I'm going to ask for volunteers, but I would suggest that Mr. Grocott and I be on that committee, but if other people would like to be on it, I will.
Well, that's just not fair. I was going to make the same suggestion.
Mr. Grocott, would you accept that? Okay. So you and I will do the ad hoc committee then, Mr. Malpe, so when you need us? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Olbert. Thank you, Mr. Grocott. All right. Moving on. Item 6, presentations. We have a presentation tonight of a proclamation to L3 Communications. They are donating $2,500 toward the Rebuild a Home Safety Program. So I think I have that down here. If those folks can come up. Cool. This is Mr. Bond, to say if I said it right, and Ms. Odell, and L3 Communications. I was just talking to Mr. Bond before the meeting. At one time was called Litton Industries, and I remember, he thinks that it was 1953, I guess, that they were in San Carlos, and I actually remember as a younger person driving by those buildings, and now of course it's L3. I'm not going to read all of the items on this proclamation, but basically, whereas the City of Redwood City San Carlos Fire Department has partnered with Rebuilding Together Peninsula to provide smoke and carbon monoxide alarms for families within San Mateo County that cannot afford such life safety alarms. And whereas L3 Communications, a prime contractor in command, control, communications, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance systems, platform and logistics solutions, and national security solutions, has graciously pledged to donate $2,500 toward the purchase of carbon monoxide alarm devices for residential use. So this is the kind of a community effort that we appreciate and have a lot of in San Carlos, where our different companies that are here and also our businesses give back to the community in a number of ways, and especially for folks that can't afford some of these things, and these things are life enhancing, so that the folks can have smoke alarms is obviously the most important part. So, Mr. Bond, thank you very much. Ms. Odell, I will give you the microphone if you'd like to say something, please.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we appreciate the proclamation. On behalf of the division president, Murray Kennedy, I'd like to present the check to you for
Thank you very much.
$2,500. I would like to say that we have a very good working relationship with both the fire department and the police department. It's great that we can help out and assist the community in any way that we can. We like to be a good community member and support the community. And we really appreciate both the fire department and the police department. You know, when we call, they're there, and that's very important, and we appreciate the support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, folks. And let the record show that I handed the check to the city clerk. And I also want to recognize Fire Marshal Jim Parisi is here tonight. So thank you, Fire Marshal, for being here. I know you work hand in glove with a lot of these folks, so that's terrific. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is public comment. This is for persons wishing to address the council on matters not on the posted agenda. We limit this usually to about 2 to 3 minutes for each person. I have more things flying up here, so we'll see what we have. And, okay, we'll go from here. I have 4 speaker slips. The first speaker slip that I have is Andre Carpio. Mr. Carpio?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, member of the public. Thank you very much for fixing the hearing assisting device. This time I can function. I did understand everything you said, so thank you. I want to wish all of you a good holiday season. I don't want the theft of my solar car to disturb you too much. It's my problem. I just paid the insurance again for a vehicle that I don't have. But anyway, it saved me the trouble of what we call the risk and product liability. My next item is that I would like to remind you what's going to be your position, and I'm going to inquire you in writing about resolving the theft of my solar car. I understand the car is somewhere in North Carolina, in which I cannot afford to go over there and investigate, but perhaps some of you can afford that. So, and I'd like to meet also the new candidate. And thank you for your service, Ms. Clapper. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Carpio. The next speaker slip I have is Megan Miller.
Good evening. My name is Megan Miller. I'm a resident of San Carlos with my family. We live on Cordilleras near Elizabeth. Thanks for allowing me a chance to speak with you tonight. I just passed out a couple of pages that summarize the letter that I sent out to you and other members of the community within the last month. And I just wanted to highlight our concerns again in this forum. So really there are 2 concerns that we have. One is the speed of cars as I go down Cordilleras, primarily between Elizabeth Avenue and San Carlos Avenue. And the second issue is the safety of that specific Cordilleras-Elizabeth intersection. We recognize, the neighbors and I recognize that there are many streets in San Carlos that have visibility or speeding issues. I think what makes our situation unique is that it is used by families to walk to school. So there's, I think, over 40 children who, well, a minimum of 40 children who use that to walk to Central, Britton Acres, St. Charles, and the preschool every day. But also the fact that there are no sidewalks or curbs or cars. In many streets that have similar issues, there's a sidewalk and a parked car where the cars are speeding. But in that section of Cordilleras, there's no parked car or sidewalk. There's a thin white strip that separates the car, whether it's speeding or not. Even if it's not speeding, there's still just a white strip between the car going 25 miles an hour and the children walking to school. So I just wanted to also just say thank you. I've met with many of you and many other people in the community who've given me a lot of advice and suggestions on how to proceed in trying to make some changes here, and everyone has been extremely helpful so far. Everything is, I feel like, getting some traction. So the next page is just a map of the section. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but really just highlights some of our concerns as far as where the schools are, where the section of the street is that has no sidewalk, no curb, and no protection from the car. Just this week, I had a near miss with my son who was on his scooter. It's cool to ride your little scooter to school, and he was looking down and not up, and a car was coming right towards us, and just kind of barely moved the handlebars and got within an inch of the white line at the same exact time the car was there, and I was able to grab him and move him. But it's just too many of those stories are happening for the families in that area. The next slide just highlights the issues about the speed on Cordilleras. No stop signs from all the way from where the elementary school is on Bell all the way to San Carlos Avenue. The volume and the speeding increases right before and right after school. So right before drop-off, right after drop-off, right before pickup, right after pickup, and right before or right during rush hour as people are rushing home for dinner. And those are the times that the children are on the street the most. We're currently, with the help of the police department, who does do a lot of enforcement in our area, doing a lot of self-policing as well and trying to wave cars down and getting them to try to slow them down ourselves. But we don't have our children walk to school by ourselves or walk to their friend's house or play in the front yard because it just is not safe. The other issue is the intersection on Cordilleras and Elizabeth. There's a picture here in this presentation that shows the visibility concerns that we have. It's kind of, that intersection is at a crest. And the combination of the visibility concerns with the crest and the cars, and there's kind of a big bushy house on one side, and then on the four corners, two of the corners don't have any curbs. And so I've almost been hit there several times. It's a very dangerous intersection. I'm trying to go quickly. We have, the next slide just shows the history of what's happened as the neighbors over the past 10 to 15 years have attempted to make some change in this area, and there are bulb outs or curb extensions. And those, we have found that those have not been successful. So you'll note that also the bollards are recently installed in August, and we have found that they have improved it a little bit, but have not addressed the two primary concerns that we have. So in the letter that I sent out, what the neighborhood is asking for is speed humps and a stop sign. And so we're working really closely with Jay Walter and his team to investigate, is that are those the best solutions? Are there better solutions to address our concerns? So we hope that this will be an official agenda item for you to consider, in the very, very, very near future. The last, on slide 10, it just highlights the population growth. So over the last 20 years, 50% growth in the student population. It's an increase of 1,200 students in our school district, and Britton Acres alone grew 35%. So it's not, when the design of this street was before all of these students, but the increase, recently is making the situation more and more dangerous all of the time. And we just don't want to wait for something bad to happen to drive some sort of change. So I just wanted to share our concerns and keep it on the top of everyone's agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Miller, very much.
Very much.
Through the chair.
Yes.
This is the same issue that, oops, everybody's hitting microphones tonight. This is the same issue that I had raised under council reports, I believe at the last meeting or might have been 4 weeks ago. And I'm curious, we had decided then that this would be agendized, so I'm just curious where we are with that.
As I understand it, it's going through Mr. Walter's office, and then it's agendized, I believe, for the next Transportation and Circulation Commission. Is that correct, Mr. Walter?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We have not yet set the agenda for the TNC meeting, but it is an ongoing concern that TNC has identified for us to address as well. We have meetings with the sheriff's office to talk about the speeding and other issues out there. We're talking about the subject of speed humps and applicability and that kind of thing. My staff's been looking at the old studies that have been done out there. So we're getting ready to kind of formulate some recommendations and bring those back to the TNC first to have a discussion there. That would be our approach.
And then it comes to us.
Does it?
Ultimately, it would only if it was needed to, say, have a capital project or something appropriated for it.
Okay.
But if it's something that we would be able to do within current budgets, maintenance budgets, things like that, or if it was something that residents would pay for, as would happen in some cases with speed humps, then we'll take care of it. But we'll bring it back to the council if appropriate, and we'll certainly let you know what the final result is.
Certainly, if the neighborhood perhaps doesn't agree with what TNC comes up with, I would imagine we'll see it.
I would agree.
Frankly, I think this is a big enough issue. This is a major artery in town. It's become a major artery. It was never designed as such. And my feeling is I would like to see it at the council. When I walked it, I had some other things that were concerns of mine, and I would like to have an opportunity to address those publicly and have them discussed.
Well, I don't think it's any problem if you could transmit perhaps some of the information to Jay or to Ms. Miller, your comments, and certainly we can have it back here. But I mean, if the residents sign off, and again, they live there, I don't necessarily see why it comes to us if the residents sign off. Now, if they don't, then yeah, I think we should. I mean, they live there. So we may have a bigger picture, and if there's something that you felt is left out, then I agree. Yeah.
Well, then I'll transmit my comments to Mr. Walters.
I think that would be a good start. And then if there's stuff that isn't addressed, Mr. Grocott, I'm sure it could come back to us. And again, Ms. Miller is going to bring it back to us if she doesn't like it. I can guarantee you that. So we'll have it.
We'll have good ongoing discussion about it. I'm not questioning that at all.
No,
So,
I understand. And I'm just saying.
As any one of you might have ideas, concerns, or otherwise, please let me know.
Sure.
And then we'll look into those as well. But as we were approaching this, certainly the TNC is that
Right.
advisory body that you have tasked with these kind of things, and so we definitely want to get back to them first.
Okay, great. Hopefully that'll be in January.
We definitely will have a discussion about it in December, but we will hope
Okay,
to
if
have
there's a
something.
December meeting coming up, I apologize, then yes. I didn't realize it was scheduled. That'd be great.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Next speaker card I have is Christy Fletcher.
Hi, good evening,
Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Christy Fletcher. I'm also a resident on Cordilleras. I live at the northern end of the block, of the 700 block, and what's unusual about this block, as you have heard, is that we have no sidewalks. And as a very busy, heavily traveled street as far as cars as well as pedestrians, I thank you in advance for your continued interest in the safety of our street and our children. Lots of scary things are going on there with all these kids walking to school. We have 30 out of 33 neighbors who have signed a petition that are interested in slowing and calming the traffic and making the street safer for our kids to walk to school. 3 neighbors did not sign because they were unavailable. So we don't know that they're not interested in this as well. But I thank you for your continued interest in our street.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fletcher.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
When staff is having discussions internally and with TNC, it sounds like also there may be a value in having discussions with the school district. A couple of people have commented about how the flux of risk actually is higher, it sounds like, sounds like a lot of it may be related to people dropping off and picking up kids.
Okay. Another point that I'm sure will be taken into account. Next speaker I have is J.R. Bay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilmen, councilwomen. My name is J.R. Bay. I am also a resident of the 700 block of Cordilleras, and the purpose here tonight is to come and show you that this is not one neighbor's concern. We, as an entire community of that block and of the local schools, we have collected signatures that really show that everyone who uses that street, pedestrians and drivers on that street, know that this is an accident waiting to happen. And Ms. Miller has put so much energy into this. She has been the face of this before all of you and before TNC. She's worked with Mr. Walters and the police chief. But we wanted to show up here tonight as a neighborhood to show you that this is not one crazy lady who who just is concerned about speeding traffic like every other neighbor. This is the whole community that is concerned that our children are not safe on this street. And thank you very much for your interest. We do feel like we're getting some traction, and we just really hope that in 2014 we can take care of this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I think all the members of the council share Mr. Grocot's concerns as well as your concerns. I've driven that street a number of times in my life, and I agree that definitely something needs to be done, especially with the kids walking to school. So hopefully we'll be able to have some good solutions. Thank you again for coming and offering your comments. Next speaker I have is Warren Lieberman.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Grisilli and honorable members of the San Carlos City Council. My name is Warren Lieberman. As many of you may know, I serve on the Belmont City Council. Just wanted to come very briefly just to say thank you to all of you for the time that you've spent serving the city of San Carlos and the greater community on the council, to extend my appreciation and gratitude to Councilmember Clapper for her time as her service concludes to the city. Greatly appreciate it. As you know, so I've had the privilege to work more closely with some of you on the San Carlos Council, in particular with Councilmember Grocott and Mayor Grisilli on various commissions. I really just wanted to say, there are new times ahead of us in the community. I look very, very forward to serving with the members of the San Carlos Council and the new incoming members as well, and wish them all the Godspeed and the best of luck as they serve our community, and really just wish to say I look forward to working with you all in the next upcoming years. There's a lot of exciting things on the looking out for us, and I know we can accomplish a great deal as we continue to work collaboratively together. So good luck with your meeting tonight. My apologies that I'm not going to be able to stay through the whole meeting. I just wanted to get some comments out early on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, council member. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow night at your meeting. And I'm sure I echo again the council's thoughts that we certainly enjoy working with Belmont and would like to work with them even more in the future. So thank you. Next, no, that's it. I guess that's the last speaker card I have for that item. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 8, approval of consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion on these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. So does anyone want to remove any items, or I'll have a motion for the approval?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. Okay, moving on, item 9, reports to council. These are updates on key city projects by city department heads and staff and city council subcommittees. They are informational in nature. No action will be taken on these items at this meeting. And the first item is 9A, update on condition of PG&E Natural Gas Line 147. Mr. Maltby.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. As I'm sure you're aware, late last week, Judge Bushy issued her tentative ruling and recommendation to the CPUC, reaffirming that PG&E be allowed to operate Line 147 at up to 330 pounds per square inch of pressure. That decision does not take effect until approved by the CPUC Commission. That hearing, I understand, is tentatively scheduled right now for December 19th at 9:30 a.m. in San Francisco. Staff will be attending that hearing. Between now and then, we'll be reaching out to have a dialogue with the commissioners on the issues that are appropriate to discuss through ex parte communications at the advice of CPUC staff. We've also put together a meeting next week with the governor's chief of staff to further discuss this issue. So we'll be keeping you informed as this moves forward, and we'll be working with each of you on your availability on attendance at the CPUC meeting later this month. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Mr. Maltby? Okay. Mr. Olbert?
Yes. Will, before these hearings that you're talking about, will there be an opportunity to get more information from some of our outside experts?
Yes, our outside expert is preparing a report as we speak that will be presented publicly and to the CPUC. We believe that through our expert that the pipe should be operated at no more than 220 pounds per square inch going forward until certain improvements or inspections are made to the pipeline that to date have not happened. Another thing that may happen between now and then, we're hopeful that would happen between now and then, is that the CPUC may issue a alternate recommendation to the Commission for consideration, and we'll make sure that we forward that along to you as well as post it to the website and make it publicly available should that occur.
One other just quick question. Have we heard anything from PG&E at all as to whether or not they are going to be able to accelerate some of the preparations for pigging the line, for basically testing the line more thoroughly?
We have not. As I'm sure you're aware, I believe you were all copied. Congresswoman Jackie Spear sent a letter, I believe it was last week, asking that the line be pigged sometime in 2014. As you'll recall from previous discussions, it's not possible to pig the line right now. PG&E has been making improvements to put in a launcher and a receiver for a pig, but there are other modifications to the line that need to take place, is our understanding, before a probe can negotiate the full length of the pipe. And we were very appreciative of the Congresswoman and her staff for strongly suggesting that those improvements be made sooner rather than later so that Line 147 can be fully inspected.
Okay, other questions? Thank you, Mr. Maltby. Next item on our agenda is item 10, public hearing, and 10A, consideration of adopting ordinance 1469 to adopt the 2012 edition of the International Fire Code with the 2013 California Fire Code amendments, and to consider adopting ordinance 1470 to amend and modify chapter 15.04 of the City of San Carlos Municipal Code, Technical Building Codes, to adopt the 2013 California Building Code Series, 2012 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code, and the Safety Assessment Program, SAP, placards. Mr. Valley.
All right. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of Council. As you'll recall, at the November 25th Council meeting, I introduced some of the more notable changes with the California Building Codes, touching upon a few of the items that will have an impact on new development and remodeling of existing structures in our area. Since the last Council meeting, there's been some 11th hour information that has come up. We've learned that the effective date of the new energy code will be delayed until July 1st, 2014, instead of the originally proposed January 1st start date. I confirmed this today with the Energy Commission. And what this means is that our current green building ordinance, including current green point threshold and 15% energy enhancement, will remain in effect until July 14th as well. The delayed effective date of the new energy code will enable the Energy Commission more time to provide information on how the new standards will work with California utilities, building industry, and provide additional training to building departments throughout the state. Staff recommends further action related to the city's green building ordinance, including consideration of omitting the ordinance altogether to occur after we've had a full review of the new energy standards and respective of the July 1st revised timeline. And I can answer any questions you have at this moment.
Questions for Mr. Valley? Apparently no questions. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? This is a public hearing. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I move we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so, folks, we have a motion to adopt or some other comments?
So this is the final adoption, even though
Yes.
there was that change? Okay.
Right.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 1469, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos, amending the San Carlos Municipal Code, Chapter 15.04, Section 15.04.110, Technical Building Codes, by adopting the 2012 edition of the International Fire Code, with the 2013 California Fire Code amendments, including all adopted standards as specified, prescribing regulations governing conditions hazardous to life and property from fire, hazardous materials, or explosion, and for providing the fire safety inspection process for the hazardous uses of operations, and establishing a Bureau of Fire Prevention, parentheses, San Carlos Fire Ordinance, in parentheses.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. All right, moving on to item 10B. Public hearing on
This is
2000.
a second.
We have a second ordinance, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yeah, second ordinance.
Sorry. I apologize.
Mr. Mayor, I move adoption of ordinance number 1470, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos, amending the San Carlos Municipal Code, Chapter 15.04, Technical Building Codes, by adopting the 2013 editions of the California Administrative Code, California Building Code, Volumes 1 and 2, California Residential Code, California Electrical Code, California Mechanical Code, California Plumbing Code, California Energy Code, California Historical Code, California Existing Building Code, California Green Building Standards Code, California Reference Standards Code, 1997 Uniform Security Code, the 2012 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code with amendments and modifications, and Safety Assessment Program, parentheses, SAP, close parentheses, placards.
Thank you, Mr. Olbert. Appreciate the correction on that. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on this?
Just a comment.
Sure thing.
I voted last time no on this. I'm going to vote no again. And this pertains to the industry I work in. When the building code was first adopted in the 1920s, it was a book that was about half an inch thick, maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. I think Mr. Valley has it in his office. Now the code is about that big, and takes half his office to keep it. And my point's not how big it's gotten, but it has needlessly gotten this big. And especially in the last few editions, it has gone from being a public safety code to let's tell you how you should live your life code. And for those reasons is why I'm going to vote against it. I also am looking down the road at where this is going with the zero net energy that the state's looking at, and frankly, I don't see how they're going to get there except to somehow come up with a system whereby if you don't meet the zero net energy, you will pay a tax or a fee or a fine of some kind for not having met it, similar to carbon credits that go on with industry. And knowing that that is the ultimate goal where this code is now going is the reason I'm voting against it.
All right. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Grocott. Any other comments?
Just a question through the chair of staff. Having made the motion, I just want to make sure that it does properly reflect this last-minute change for delaying implementation of the energy code.
It does not include any changes from originally introduced. What I understand staff is going to do is study the impact between now and the effective date of those standards on July of 2014.
Actually, I think you probably answered my question by saying the effective date is July 2014 now.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Okay. This is a public. Well, I already closed the public hearing. Well, I'll tell you what. Good thing I'm getting off of this. Mine's somewhere else. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
No.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. All right. Let's move on to 10B. See if I do a little better there. Public hearing on 2014 solid waste rates pursuant to Proposition 218 and approval of a resolution adopting 2014 solid waste rules. Mr. Walter.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Jay Walter, Public Works Director. Tonight, we're before you to hold public hearing on the 2014 solid waste rates. So tonight's action, as part of the Proposition 218 notice process, we're to hold the public hearing for the solid waste rates and to let you know that in the intervening period when we issued the Prop 218 notice and tonight's hearing, we had a total of 4 protests submitted, and I'll check with the city clerk to find out if any had come in right before meeting time.
Just the 4.
Okay. Just the 4 protests that were received as part of the Prop 218 process. Compared to 72 last year. And of course, it's probably partly due to the fact that we don't have a rate increase planned for 2014. So tonight you'll have an opportunity to further discuss the 2014 solid waste rates if you so choose. There are representatives from SBWMA here and Recology as well as city staff, so if there's questions that you may have, we'll try to address those. And tonight we'll ask you to adopt a resolution that sets the 2014 solid waste rates. And we will need to have a little bit of time to amend that resolution if you make any changes during the hearing tonight. So in this process, as we had outlined before, the Recology, our waste collection contractor, and South Bay Recycling, the materials handling facility, they submit rate applications through the SBWMA board for the compensation that they need in the following year. The SBWMA board, which is now made up of elected members of all the agencies in our area, reviews and approves the revenue requirements as part of that process, and then each of the member agencies then goes about and sets the rates for their own agency according to the time frames that their bills are issued. So for the City of San Carlos, we have a very tight time frame from the September meeting when that revenue requirement is approved to when we need to have the public hearing for the 2014 rates to be effective in January. So at the October 14th, 2013 meeting, we discussed the revenue requirements for 2014 and for the City of San Carlos, as I'll show in a couple of slides a little bit more detail, but we have an estimated $160,000 surplus, which means that based on the 2013 rates, we will collect slightly more than the revenue required to pay for the services that are part of our franchise agreement. We discussed cart alignment strategy and how staff is looking for, over the course of several years, to try to bring the rates for the solid waste carts into alignment with the actual cost to service those carts. And that's something which we know will take several years because there is some disparity in the cart sizes along that line. Council directed no increases in solid waste rates as we came into to put out the Prop 218 notice and come into the public hearing this evening. So you'll find that is how we have prepared the recommendation for you. And then at that meeting, you directed us to issue that Prop 218 notice, which starts the process out. So again, in review, the 2014 revenue requirement is a little over $8 million. And again, the collection revenue at the 2013 rates results in an estimated $160,000 surplus. And that surplus, through the information that was provided by SBWMA staff, breaks down into these areas. There is a slight increase in the disposal and processing of materials cost at the SBR facility, but we have, and a slight increase in the city cost to this, but we have decreases in recology services and from the 2013 base revenue. So again, our surplus slightly over $160,000. And as part of the process, we go through with setting the rates. There are always a number of years that are included in that process. So we have the final allocations for 2011, 2012 that are part of that. We have the 2013 year, which is still in progress, so it has yet to be finally determined. And then we have what is forecast for 2014. So we're always sort of looking at multiple years as we deal with solid waste rates. And in San Carlos in particular, our current revenue for both commercial and residential breaks down. Commercial is 4.7 million of the 8.2 million, and the residential accounts are about 3.5 million. And as I talked earlier, just a quick review again as far as cart rate alignment goes. As you can see on the chart on the screen, we have the current rate per month for the different cart sizes, and these are the solid waste carts that are in our residential accounts. And those are charged at the rates shown, and we have an actual contractor cost per month that's shown in the next adjacent column. And then on the far right, you can see that there is a difference in that our smallest solid waste carts are actually being charged less than the cost of actually servicing them, and our two largest cart sizes are actually paying more than the cost to service those carts. And that cost per month includes the recycling component as well as the compost component. This is the cost to service that account, as was pointed out by our SBWMA folks after our last meeting. And again, we have a difference that ultimately we believe that based on Prop 218 and the idea that you are paying for the services that are being provided, there is a need to get a little closer in terms of the alignment between the cost and the service provided. And that's something that SBWMA has said they would be interested in working with us as well going forward, the Prop 218 issues. So the council recommended option for your consideration tonight is that we are proposing no increase to the 20-gallon or 32-gallon cart sizes in the residential categories. We are recommending a slight decrease in the 64-gallon and 96-gallon cart sizes in order to help those costs come into closer alignment with the cost of the service for that. And we're not recommending an increase on the commercial sector at this time either. So this is our recommended option going forward. So overall, a slight decrease in our revenue for 2014. The one other item that Council has to approve tonight as part of the resolution will be the unscheduled services, also known as Attachment Q. These are special services such as backyard collection or special pickups that residents can set up individually for their account. And so these costs are passed directly on to the subscribing customer only. It's not an overall city cost. The rate adjustment for these is based on an index per the contract with Recology. A very confusing acronym of a name, but consumer price index related. And so this year we're recommending 1.69% increase on those unscheduled services per the contract and agreement with Recology. So what happens when we actually decrease the cost of the 64 and 96-gallon carts? Well, we actually end up reducing the subsidy slightly from $160,000 down to $71,000. We still believe that that subsidy is very small, and it's a projected number. It's by no means final. So we believe that there is no need to set it aside in any kind of special account or anything like that. And so going forward, we don't believe that there's anything more other than recommending that you would approve these 2014 rates, and that surplus will end up being what it is after several years when we finally get to that point of reconciling the 2014 rates, which may still be 2 years from now, but in terms of what ultimately was collected and what our cost was in 2014. We believe we need some further study on the commercial rates within San Carlos. It's been a number of years since any kind of a commercial rate study was done, and so staff would propose that we'd go forward and commission a commercial rate study to help us better understand the costs for the services that are provided there, provide us good up-to-date information. And then looking forward, we are hopeful that we might achieve this card alignment by the end of our Recology contract in 2020. But again, that will be based on this council and other councils' direction in the future in terms of how you'd like to see the rates change. So we'll take direction on that as we go year to year, but the idea is we would be trying to work towards that card alignment over a period of time. So again, a staff recommendation for your consideration tonight: no changes in the rates for 20 and 32-gallon residential customers. Decreases, a $5 decrease for 64-gallon customers, $10 decrease for 96-gallon residential containers, no change in the commercial rates, and 1.69% increase for all unscheduled services. And next steps tonight, you have a public hearing to take public testimony and ask questions of staff if needed. We would hope to have the rates effective January 1st and ready for the first Recology billing in February, when we will have those new rates take effect. So questions from council at this time? Again, as I mentioned, SBWMA staff, Recology folks here, and city staff as well.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Walter. Questions, Mr. Walter? Mr. Grocott.
I just want to understand correctly with the three options. Only the third option leaves the surplus at 160. Is that correct? Option 3.
Only the third option would do that, and that is if you did not decrease the rates for the 64 and 96 gallon containers. So that was a complete leave everything the same across the board. That's what that option was.
Okay. And then I know this is about rate changes right now, the staff report, but in your verbal report there you mentioned about further studies of commercial rates and so forth. I didn't hear anything said about what we discussed at one of our other meetings where we were looking at these rates, and we discussed a program for seniors to give them a safe haven because many of them use the smallest cans they can, and even with that they're not filling them up. And I suppose that would argue, when you talk about Prop 218 and service received and what you're paying for, I could see where someone in that situation would say to themselves, I'm only putting out these cans because it's somewhat required with the food scraps and so forth. I'm not filling up the can, or maybe I'm not even putting out the can every week because even with the smallest, I don't fill it up. So there's that situation, and people on fixed incomes like that trying to maintain their own family, their household budget. We had talked about that, and I didn't hear anything mentioned about that.
Well, I think the direction that I came away from the last meeting with was that we would pursue what was considered to be that lifeline type plan for some of the folks that would qualify under what we were seeing was PG&E criteria for being able to have a discounted rate. And so we were going to pursue that and look into that and see how it would be applicable here in San Carlos. We'd have to bring back for you, though, once we actually get a number, what that would mean, because the discussion also covered how would that amount be paid for if we were to subsidize those folks. And I think we had indicated that it might be a small general fund stipend that might be needed in order to help that program work. But we wanted to get started on that and see how we could roll that program out and then see what our numbers actually were. So it's a number that we would bring back to you probably in the June-July time frame.
So would that be ready to converge with our rate changes that you're talking about in the future, where we try to bring the cart migration, deal with the cart migration and bring all the costs more in keeping with what they actually are or what they're determined to actually be.
That's correct. The timing would be right for that.
So we could converge the two, where we're making rate changes, but at the same time when we're making, because what I see going on, and this is for the council as well, what I see happening is that smallest can getting increased a fair amount in order to make up for where it is now, and then you've got somebody on a fixed income and you're giving them shock treatment. I would like to avoid giving people shock treatment.
And our intent is certainly to phase this in the direction that we would go. And I think this would dovetail nicely in with the next round of rate setting that occurs, because we'll begin to see those numbers coming across from the two contractors in around June. And so everything would converge nicely into that September timeframe.
Look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions of staff?
No.
Okay. This is a public hearing. I have one speaker card. If anyone else wishes to speak, if they'd fill out a card. The card I have is Bill Behrens.
Mayor and council members, my name is Bill Behrens. I'm representing the Homeowners Association at 793 Elm Street. That's the northeast corner of Elm and Olive. I was impressed by the content of the October 14th staff report that you received, and the report here this evening was impressive. I won't try to repeat the information that you were given, only to say that I was quite surprised to learn from the report that the 96-gallon rate is 191% of the contractor's costs, while the 20-gallon cart is just 48% of the contractor's costs. Those are pretty startling numbers to me. But I want to support the staff recommendation and ask you to visualize where I live. If you were standing across the street, I think you'd agree that it's a residential property. But last week, I learned, much to my surprise and I guess disappointment, that the service that we receive is classed as a commercial service, not residential. So the rates that you're considering this evening for reducing the charge for the 96-gallon cart won't apply to us. And that's the disappointment. I was really looking forward to being able to see a reduction in our some $6,000 annual cost for rubbish collection by even 10%. It would be pretty significant to us in a small budget. I doubt very much if the cost for collection of our 5 carts under a commercial rate structure is really much different than it would be if we were under the residential schedule with just 4 carts, and that seems to be the difference. 4 carts and you're classed as residential, 5 carts you're classed as commercial. So in addition to supporting the recommendation of the staff, I want to urge the council this evening to direct the staff to begin immediately to take a good hard look at the commercial rate structure. I'd suggest asking for a report in 60 to 90 days, maybe April 1st, because if the alignment of the charges and the costs are as far out in the residential structure, they may be in the commercial structure as well. And so I would hope that you would not wait till the end of next year to take a good hard look at the commercial structure. And just one other closing comment, I think. While it may be sound to have as public policy a subsidy for the smaller carts, I think that that subsidy ought to come from the general city funds and not by surcharging the owners of the larger carts, as appears to be the case now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Behrens, for your comments. Staff is going to be, as given in the report, is going to be studying the commercial rates, and will come back and give us a breakdown of commercial versus residential and how those, whether it's an ordinance or whatever it is now, and we'll look at those
Through the
costs.
chair.
Yes, Mr. Grocott.
I believe the policy that determines whether can pick up is commercial or residential is handled by the SBWMA board, is it not?
That I don't know. I don't know.
It seems it would be something that could be taken up there. It seems like it's a policy question. Yeah.
Mr. Walter or Mr. Malpe, do we know the reason that, or what the cutoff is for commercial or residential? Or does, Kevin, do you know? Or Mario? Somebody? Okay. So, yeah, could you come up? Kevin, I'm sorry. Just so we get it on the record. Thank you.
Kevin McCarthy, Executive Director of Rethink Waste. It is 5 accounts. It's actually defined in your franchise agreement, so it doesn't have to come to the SBWMA board. You could, if you wanted to, you could amend your franchise agreement.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair
Thank you,
enough. Thank
Mr.
you.
McCarthy. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Grocott.
So how can we address this gentleman's concern, or should we?
Well, I think Mr. Walter indicated in his report, as in fact it's right up there, or not that deck, but one of the other pages, that we're going to be looking at the differences. And I think when he comes back with his report, I would imagine we would address all of that. Mr. Malpe, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just to confirm what you're saying is correct. We don't have the ability to address that tonight, but that's one of the many issues that we're looking at that will be before the council for consideration and possible modification.
If I may?
Go ahead.
It seems to me it does relate to an issue I brought up before, which is the way so many of the residential properties have to have, like on the street I live on Walnut Street, there's apartments galore that put out 10, 15 cans. There's not really the room for it. It's unsightly. And yet when I asked last time why don't they do a bin, I forget exactly what the answer was, but there seemed to be some complexity to the issue that kept these property owners from putting out, a large bin that their residents, their people that live in their buildings could use. It just seems like a very convoluted policy. And then to note, I had no idea tonight, and this is the first I learned of it, where if you've got a small 10-unit apartment building, but you're only using, and you've knocked it down to where you're using 5 cans that are large, that your residents can, use however they please, you're still considered commercial and you're paying commercial rates when, next door to you might be a duplex. They got 2 cans and they're paying the residential rate. This seems completely out of whack to me. So I don't know how we fix this, but it seems to be something that needs addressing.
Mr. Olbert?
Yeah, just as an observation, I would like to see the results of the staff work that is scheduled to be done looking at the entire panoply of issues relating to commercial rates, because there are some other ones here that I think are actually, with all due respect to the gentleman who spoke, from a policy point of view, probably far more significant from a dollar point of view. So before we start making decisions, I think it's also important to recognize that very likely it's almost impossible to avoid threshold effects. You draw a line someplace. If it's 5 cans or 6 cans or 4 cans or 7 cans, there's always somebody who's on either side of it. That doesn't mean we can't change it. We can't look at tweaking it. But I, for one, as I was saying, would like to see all of the information before we start meddling around with that.
Oh, I agree. I think both gentlemen, made good points, and hopefully Mr. Walter will be able to look literally at everything, because, as Mr. Olbert said, there is going to be a break. Somewhere there has to be a break, but I know across the street they have many, many units, and they put out a big, some big monster bins, okay? They don't put out cans. Now, there may be cans in the back of that building I don't see, but at least they put out bins. They have multiple units. But anyway, I think we should look at each line, like Mr. Grocott said, because there's the difference between commercial and residential, and now's the time to do it, because we've got a little bit of a surplus and we've got a little bit of a break, and by next year we may not have that, but at least we can identify in the future what we want to do.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Make a motion. Could I hear a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I move that the public hearing be closed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So, what do we want to do here?
Want a motion?
Yeah, motion would be good.
Mr. Mayor, I'll Move that we approve resolution number 2013-126,
126.
a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos approving residential and commercial solid waste rates.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion?
I'm just trying to follow then which option we're going with the staff recommendation to
Mr.
reduce the
Collins?
96 cart rate, $5 and so forth.
Yes,
Correct?
going with the staff recommendation.
Very good.
Okay. Ms. Clapper, you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. Okay, moving on, item 10C, consideration of a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos approving a relocation agreement for the removal of a billboard at 303 Old County Road, APN 046-054-090, and approving a 25-year lease for real property located at Branston Road, APN 046-081-230, for the installation of a digital billboard. Mr. Savay.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. City staff and Clear Channel Outdoor have been involved in negotiations for removal of a billboard at 303 Old County Road and the placement of a new digital billboard out near US 101. And the successful negotiation of this billboard is also part of the city's strategic plan. The relocation agreement includes the removal, as I noted, of a billboard located at 303 Old County, and that's owned by Clear Channel. And the new permanent billboard, I'll show you where it is in just a moment, out by US 101, are subject to the terms and conditions of the lease that are before you this evening. And as a result of the relocation agreement and a ban on billboards on private property in the rest of the city, once that billboard at 303 Old County is removed, one can't be placed back there. The Planning Commission also reviewed and approved the design review for the billboard back in November, and tonight the relocation agreement and the lease are before you. So this is the existing billboard and what it looks like at 303 Old County Road, and as I noted, once that's removed, you wouldn't be able to replace it in that location. So to orient you, this is Old County Road, Industrial Road located here. Here's Highway 101 running up through here. And here's Branston right here, and it terminates at 101. And here's a closer view of that area. And during the discussion for the relocation, staff identified this remnant right-of-way at the end of Branston that was remnant that was left over from the construction back in the 1950s at the Bayshore Freeway.
Mr. Savay, excuse me.
Yes.
Didn't you mean Branston's at the top?
Yeah, it's in both locations, actually. This is a broader bird's eye view, and this is just a closer location. And this is where Branston terminates into Highway 101. And so this is just kind of give you a bird's eye view of the neighborhood here, the industrial commercial buildings that surround.
I just wanted to make sure everybody understood it was the arrow up above, not the bulb below.
It's in both locations, yes, both. It's just, this is a little closer view, kind of a magnifying glass of this little red area here.
Okay, I'm advised it's an inset picture, and I don't understand
That's
what
correct.
that means, but that's, whatever that is too. Picture in a picture. Okay,
Picture
thank
in
you.
picture.
Well, I'll tell you what, this 21st century is a heck of a year, I'll tell you. Okay, sorry.
No problem. You can see that the location is shielded by some of these commercial buildings. I'll show you some photographs in just a moment. And the closest residential neighborhood is a considerable distance away, and really view from there would be blocked by those buildings in the distance. But after several months of negotiations and review of similar billboard agreements in other cities, the relocation agreement, lease, which are before you tonight, were developed. And the lease would allow Clear Channel Outdoor to put this advertising structure at this location at the end of Branston there. In terms of the billboard details, as part of the design review, the Planning Commission contemplated a number of details and issues such as height and visibility and from the residential areas and the consistency with state laws and also its orientation toward the freeway. And so I included some of the details that they considered at their meeting there, and we can always go back to those if you like. So this is a visual simulation looking behind the businesses along the freeway, and this is looking up north in a northerly direction. And there's a tree at the end here, and here's what the billboard would look like. You're starting to see the two sides of it. This side again would be facing in a south direction. And this is from across the freeway. This is looking in a northbound direction on the 101 freeway, and you can see that in the distance the buildings, and there's some trees there, and this is a Caltrans sign, so it needed to be higher than that Caltrans sign to be visible from this direction. And here's looking from across Industrial way down Branston, and you can see the pole that holds it up there, and the two sides of the billboard are oriented away from San Carlos and out toward the freeway, and that's intentional for daytime and particularly for nighttime purposes, so the light is directed away from the city of San Carlos and onto the freeway. In terms of the lease terms, the lease would authorize the installation of this billboard on Branston as approved by the Planning Commission. And here's some of the major terms of the lease agreement. Term would be 25 years. At the end of the term, the lease would terminate, but would continue on a month-by-month basis until we notified Clear Channel. We could always renegotiate it after that. In terms of what we'd get in terms of rent, the city would receive an upfront payment of $100,000 once the billboard is in operation. And Clear Channel would also pay rent to the city for each year, and it would be equal to or greater of either $200,000 per year or 30% of the gross proceeds of the revenue. And this would be received each calendar year. And we believe because this is in such a desirable location in this marketplace on Highway 101 between San Jose and San Francisco, that the revenues that would be pretty good and would be more in the 30% range and would do a little better than $200,000 a year. Increases in rent would begin after 5 years, and it would be tied back to the CPI, and it could be no less than 2%, but no greater than 6%. And in terms of the recommendation, city staff is recommending approval of the relocation agreement and the lease with Clear Channel. And we have a number of different people here this evening to answer questions. I'm here. We also have representatives of Clear Channel, of course, Greg Rubens, and the city manager. We have Lisa Costa Sanders, who worked with the Planning Commission on the design review. So that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Savay. Questions for Mr. Savay? Mr. Grocott?
I just have you had mentioned in your report that if the existing billboard was taken down, that it couldn't be replaced. Can you explain why that is?
I'm sorry, could you please ask that
question? Can you
explain
why it is that if there's a billboard there, you said, and if it were taken down, it could not be reinstalled? Can you explain why that is?
Yes. What the city did as part of the changes that the city council made to the municipal code and the sign code, it prohibited any new billboards on private property in our city. So if this is removed, they couldn't put it back on somebody else's private property. It could only go on public property.
So was there, I'm trying to follow then, the Planning Commission, when they were looking at these signs, what they were after was eliminating signs along the San Carlos mileage, if you will, of Highway 101, of just eliminating billboard signs?
No, that wasn't the intent of the update to the sign and municipal code. The upgrade of this, actually, billboards were already prohibited in our sign code, and I can perhaps ask for a little assistance from our city attorney, but my recollection is billboards were already prohibited, but we wanted to make sure, and there was some, we wanted to make sure that our municipal code and our sign code were ironclad in that regard, so we did some changes to those codes, brought it forward to the Planning Commission and the council. But it wasn't, the intent wasn't initially to, eliminate all the billboards that are there or anything like that. It was to prevent the future new billboards on private property.
And why is that?
Well, Councilmember Grocott, as stated by Mr. Savay, since the city was incorporated, we've banned billboards. The billboards that are there either were put in place before they became part of the incorporated city or had been in existence before the city was incorporated. The idea to ban the billboards was reinforced with the 2010 upgrade of the sign ordinance. And then the recent tweaks were to clarify that the section, chapter 12 of our code does in fact allow billboards on public property. And the original ordinance that we did in 2010 allowed billboards on public property through a relocation agreement. So that's what we're really doing here now, is we're saying on public property different standards apply. And we identified this parcel, again, a remnant parcel at the end of Branston Road, as being owned by the city and therefore eligible for such a billboard. And the reason for the reason we need the relocation agreement is to extinguish the grandfathering rights of the existing billboard. So once it's gone, as pointed out by Mr. Savay, there's no way that a new billboard could go on a private piece of property under any circumstances.
So why are we, that's what I don't understand, is why we're stripping away the rights of private property owners to have a billboard and to make money by having a billboard, yet on public property, on city-owned property, it's okay.
That's more of a philosophical or policy sort of discussion.
Okay, fair enough. Then you don't have to answer the question. I'll ask it of the council.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Savay? Mr. Albert?
Yeah, just two quick ones. Mr. Savay, some speakers and people who have written to us have raised an issue of what I will call brightness and distraction issues associated with this type of technology billboard. What I was curious about is I presume the state does not yet have any kind of rules that govern that, or perhaps they do, but if they were to change them and make them tighter so as to restrict the types of use that we're anticipating, how does that play into our arrangements? Does it nullify them? Does it?
I think two people might be able to better answer that question. One would be Robert Hatton of Clear Channel, because there are regulations that regulate, and then perhaps our city attorney. So I'm going to ask Mr. Hatton to get up and help.
Thank you.
While Mr. Hatton comes up, the lease contemplates compliance with state law and obtaining a Caltrans permit for the billboard. So whatever the Caltrans standards apply now and in the future is what would apply to the brightness issue.
Mr. Hatton?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Robert Hatton with Clear Channel Outdoor. As to state guidelines on the operation of digital signs, the state of California mandates that the message not change more than once every 4 seconds. We have committed to not changing the message more than once every 8 seconds, which is a gesture towards making sure that driver distraction is not an issue. And as to the brightness, I would echo the city attorney's comments that we have agreed through our agreements to always abide by state and federal guidelines, and to the extent that those are changed, we would need to be in conformance.
Other questions for staff? No. If not, Mr. Hatton, you had a speaker's card here, so you might as well stay up, and if you have some other comments to make.
Absolutely. Again, Robert Hatton here, Clear Channel Outdoor, representing Clear Channel. I'd like to thank Mr. Savay and Ms. Costa-Sanders for their thorough review and professionalism. And I'd like to thank you for hearing our item this evening. don't have any prepared presentation. I've thought that the staff has done a fine job of that, but I am available for any questions about the operation of the sign, the benefits to the city, the lease agreement, etc.
Okay, thank you. So this is, as I said, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Additional people? Please come up, please, and perhaps you could fill out a card after. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. I just have one point with respect to the city itself and private property rights. And it sounds to me like the city has made a deliberate effort to remove property rights from property owners, and then they're actually in competition, or it could look like they're in competition for that same particular right. And I would like San Carlos to really think over, you really need property owners to want to live here and own here, and I don't think it's a wise decision to have staff members trying to undermine part of being an American, which is you can own your own property. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Council? Discussion or a motion, whichever you want to start with.
I have a question of staff.
Go ahead.
We talked about the fact that there are laws that are, or the city has an ordinance that has prohibited billboards for quite a while. And so can you just clarify for me this particular situation and how this particular billboard came to be sort of targeted and removed? I'm not sure I caught all that.
Councilmember Collins, I think perhaps I can answer the question. When we were approached by Clear Channel, who identified that the city owned other property along the 101 corridor, and that property, for a lot of reasons, was not deemed suitable, mostly because of existing leases on the property. Might conflict with a development of a billboard on that site. In reviewing potential sites, staff at a meeting noticed that there was this a piece of dirt, if you will, at the end of Branston Avenue, or Branston Road, excuse me, that appeared to be undeveloped and looked like it might have once been part of the Branston Road right-of-way, because it was at the end of the existing cul-de-sac, and there was absolutely no development on it. So when we did some further investigation and obtained a preliminary title report, it turned out that not only was it once a piece of Branston Road before the Bayshore Freeway was developed, but it also, the city owned it in fee, which for the public, that just means the city owns it just like any other piece of property without restriction on it. So once we learned that, we wanted to see, through our negotiations, to see if a billboard would fit there without interfering with the right-of-way and in compliance with the regulations for signs. And so what came about was some of the tweaking that you saw at the past meetings to the Chapter 12 of the city ordinance, and also over the past several months, the negotiation of the lease for the billboard. And because we had contemplated contemplated from 2010 encouraging the elimination of older billboards in other areas of town, this seemed like an opportunity because Clear Channel owned the other billboard, and they were willing to remove it as part of this transaction. So from a staff standpoint, we felt it was, if the council wanted to consider a new billboard at the end of Branston, having an old billboard removed that's on Old County Road would make it even more attractive from an aesthetic standpoint to have the old billboard removed. And so with that in mind, we developed the program. I worked with staff on looking at other billboard agreements for public property. The city of Sacramento had just completed a program where I believe it was 6 billboards had been negotiated with Clear Channel, and there were also agreements in the city of Hayward, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Milpitas, where Clear Channel already had digital billboards of this type in place. And so we use those as models. Making a long answer to your question, perhaps, but that's how it came about.
All right, so I think I understand that. I guess my question is, was the old billboard, which Clear Channel owned, was that on private property?
Yes, it is. It's on private property.
And whose property is that?
I'm not sure whose property it is. Perhaps somebody from Clear
Okay,
Channel.
well,
could respond.
maybe it's not all that relevant. I guess my question is, if it was on private property, were they then paying the property owner a fee to use that billboard?
I imagine that's the case, but I don't know the terms of that billboard lease.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Discussion or a motion or something?
You want a motion?
Nope. Let's get something going.
Hang on. All right. This is resolution number 2013-127, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos approving a relocation agreement for the removal of a billboard at 303 Old County Road, APN, I guess that's assessor's parcel number 046-054-090, and approving a 25-year lease for the real property located at Branston Road, 046-081-230 for the installation of a digital billboard.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Mr. Grocott?
Well, one of the things I'm sitting here thinking about is my days in college, and one of the particular courses I took on lighting and lighting design and architecture. And one of the things that they encouraged, of course, was eliminating light pollution as much as possible. That's something that Bob Black has been to us and talked to us about on a number of occasions, because he has the concern of keeping clear skies and being able to go up to Crestview Park and have their practice of looking into the stars and so forth. And I just think it's a good policy to work towards. The other thing that I remember having some guidance on in college was also eliminating visual noise and how much of a distraction that can be, especially to persons driving automobiles. If you would just take note and think about the difference between driving Highway 280, where billboards are not allowed whatsoever, versus driving the 101, where they are everywhere, as well as tall buildings with lights on and so forth. It's really a big difference. So for those two reasons, I really can't support this. I think we're going from bad to worse by eliminating billboards on private property. I can agree to that, but it just seems incongruous to me to then turn around and work a deal to the benefit of the city financially, where we're going against the grain of what it seems we went, the direction we went with eliminating billboards on private property. And my last point would be this, and I would ask the council, well, why are we doing this? Why are we creating one kind of situation for the city where they can make revenue, and yet telling a private property owner, you can't do the same thing? That seems completely unfair and wrong in my estimation.
Okay. Well, on your second point, the city isn't telling the, I don't believe, because the private property owner. Clear Channel has a lease, I assume, with the private property owner at 303 Old County Road. If Clear Channel doesn't want to have that lease anymore, and assuming it's legal that they have month to month, they can just say, we're done.
No, my point is that we now have policy on the books, is my understanding. That's why I asked the question. Once that sign goes down, it can't be rebuilt.
Right.
And the reason is because you cannot build today in San Carlos a billboard sign anywhere on private property in San Carlos.
And I think one of the reasons, and you and I were on the council, the other folks weren't, when we talked about this. I think one of the major reasons, and I remember even talking about this way back in the 90s on the Planning Commission, is that we didn't want, as you mentioned about all the billboards that are on 101, we didn't want to say, well, if Mr. Jones, who owns a piece of property, let's say abutting 101, talks to Clear Channel and says, hey, we'd like to put a billboard up, and Mr. Hutton says, sounds like a good idea to me, and then 3 doors up, somebody else says, I'd really like another billboard. Could I have a billboard? And Mr. Hutton's in the business of putting up billboards. So I think that's one of the reasons that we put that policy in, is we don't want to have a whole line of folks lining up. I mean, that's really one of the reasons. At least I remember it that way. But again, it could be a memory situation of how it works. But quite honestly, I thought that was a good idea because we didn't want to have our city have lots and lots and lots of billboards. And the only reason I'm going to vote for this is we're eliminating a billboard. If we weren't eliminating a billboard, I wouldn't vote for this. But we're eliminating a billboard and adding a billboard. So I just want to make everybody clear of why I'm one of the reasons, whether it's 200,000 or 2 million, I wouldn't vote for it because that's one of the reasons that I remember being on this council and even on Planning Commission, not wanting to have a line of them up there. So again, just my point.
And through the mayor, if I may add, and you very correctly gave a very nice synopsis and overview of the issue. There's another subtle wrinkle that you began to touch on, and that is the fact that Clear Channel owns the billboard, and they could remove it at any time, walk away from that billboard, and it couldn't be built under long-standing city regulation by that property owner, so that it would essentially be forcing Clear Channel to make that investment in another community, ergo increasing the revenue of that community. The issues of this city in terms of the tax base, the amount of tax revenue that we receive relative to a lot of the neighboring communities in San Mateo County has been well discussed and well documented by this council. And so really, by losing that opportunity to have this type of investment and revenue coming into your community, it would simply move to one of your neighboring communities that you're essentially in competition with, pushing you further behind on the revenue curve and causing you to have to make other decisions in terms of expenditure increases or reductions down the line.
And again, the last point, again, if I could just reiterate what I said before, if for some reason the city discovers, as it apparently did in this case, other property, I won't be voting for a billboard.
Well,
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just
yeah.
saying that from the dais. I won't be voting for a billboard, even though, it sounds like a great idea and it's revenue generating, unless somebody takes one down. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands where we're going here. Other comments, questions?
Just a final comment. The reason I support this is that, first of all, Clear Channel is a private company. As Mr. Malpe says, if they want to abandon a billboard, fine, but they can't put a new one up, they're going to go somewhere else. I think it's kind of silly to stand on private property rights that don't really exist anymore, because this was really sort of a grandfathering situation where a billboard existed that because it was there before the ordinance was in place. So I'm going to be voting for it because, as has been pointed out, it's an opportunity that if we miss it, we miss it, and we don't get another one. And we do remove a billboard in the process.
Okay, so other comments? Otherwise, I'll call the question.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
No.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. Okay. Moving on. Item 11A. New business. Consideration of adopting a resolution appropriating $225,000 from the Capital Projects Fund 25 to the City Hall first floor remodel and fire sprinkler project C9770. Executed agreement with Joseph Comiskey Construction Corporation of San Francisco, California, in the amount of $772,049, and authorize the expenditure of a construction budget with contingencies in the amount of $888,000.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the Council. I'm Matt Lee, the city engineer. I bring forth to you tonight for discussion and direction, the funding of the City Hall first floor improvements and sprinkler project. Before we get started on the discussion of the bid results, I wanted to kind of just do a recap of the scope of the project itself. The first floor remodel project, I categorize it into kind of three categories. The first category would be to install required ADA and fire suppression upgrades that are needed for this facility. The second item would be to replace needed maintenance items such as new carpets, paint, office furniture, and ceiling tiles. The third item would be to improve the service counter area and to open up and have a more inviting floor plan, which would help building and planning divisions integrate their workspace. Now on to the bid results. The bid opening was the day before Thanksgiving on November 27th, and we had a healthy competition with 8 bids. The lowest bidder being Joseph Kaminsky Construction Corporation in the amount of $772,049, with the addition of the soft costs, construction contingency, and allowances. The total project amount came up to $1.1 million. With the previously approved budget of $881,000, the budget appropriation requested now to fully fund the project would be $225,000, which was a lot less than what we previously anticipated with the engineer's estimate of $334,000. At the direction of council at a previous meeting, staff was directed to take a look at the scope to see what could be reduced in order to save costs. After deliberating with the design team, staff came to the understanding that most of the items were needed, as well, and most importantly, the upstairs carpeting. However, that could be one item that would be put in as an additive bid alternate that would not be part of the base bid, which could be either included or omitted as part of our discussions tonight. With the removal of the second floor carpeting, the project would save approximately $70,000, which would bring the revised budget appropriation down from $225,000 to $155,000. With the project schedule themselves, staff is hopeful that we can award the contract or get approval to award the contract tonight, and if that becomes possible, staff would work with the contractor to take full advantage of the staff furlough period in order to relocate the first floor building and planning department staff in order to have them operational up and open at the start of the new year when construction can start, and there would be no downtime for the move itself. With that said, the three alternatives that are brought to council tonight is the initial item of appropriating the full contract amount for $225,000, or reducing the scope and omitting the second floor carpeting and appropriating the project for $155,000, or providing alternate direction to staff. I now leave the floor to the councils for discussion and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thanks for your report. Questions? Mr. Grocott?
So the only question I have is, what's the, even with the 225 shortfall that could be included if we, give a go-ahead on all of this, where does it leave this checkbook, this fund, where this money's coming from?
So I think
How much is going to be left in 220 or Fund 25? Rebecca, you know? Thank you.
Rebecca Mendenhall, Administrative Services Director. In the CAFRA that you approved earlier tonight, the Fund 25 balance was around $10 million. So moving this project or increasing the appropriations would there's enough money in the fund right now to cover that. It may require us to push out some other projects. We'll be reviewing the full capital projects budget in the coming months to see what full impact that may have.
But right now, there's $10 million in Fund
Yes.
25? Okay. Thank you. I just want to make sure we got that.
That's it.
Other questions? Yes, Mr. Olbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lee. I think I may have actually asked this question when we had this item up earlier, but I don't remember the answer. When was the upstairs carpet last replaced?
I believe the upstairs carpet was last replaced over 20 years ago. It's in due of a replacement, just based on the nature of the carpet and the high level of traffic that occurs up and down the hallways.
And then the other question I have about that is, so deleting it from the scope of work in this project would potentially save us roughly $70,000. If we were to find out next year that something has happened and we have to replace it, something goes wrong with it, let's say, I presume it's more expensive to do that as a one-off project as opposed to part of a larger project. Is that correct?
Typically, that is the case. It's better to bundle certain construction elements together, but that's not to say we may not be able to find a competitive price elsewhere.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Yeah, I just had one question for Mr. Lee. What's underneath the carpet there now? If it were removed, what's the surface underneath it? Is it tile or wood or what?
I believe it's concrete.
Or it would just be bare concrete?
Yes. Just like the walls.
Good idea. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? This isn't a public hearing, but if anyone wishes to speak on this item? Okay. Hearing none. So discussion, motion, folks, what are you going to do?
I'll make a motion to approve the project and go forward with it. I'm not looking quite at the resolution here. Let me turn to it. So it's a resolution appropriating $225,000 from Capital Projects Fund 25 to the City Hall first floor remodel and fire sprinkler project C9770, whatever that means. Execute an agreement with Joseph Comiskey Construction Corporation of San Francisco in the amount of $772,049, authorizing the expenditure of a construction budget with contingencies in the amount of $888,000.
City Clerk, what number was that resolution?
2013-128.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Olbert?
Just a quick question I want to confirm. So to staff, this would, if we approve the resolution as proposed, this would include doing the carpet work upstairs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's correct. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. One more item, folks, before we get to reorganization. 11B, consideration of approving a resolution amending compensation provisions of the City Attorney's personal services contract. Mr. Maltby.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to step out of the room since this concerns me.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Jeff Maltby, City Manager. Each year, the City Council evaluates its city manager and city attorney, and the city attorney had his turn in the hot seat recently and got a very favorable evaluation from the City Council. As part of that discussion, the city attorney asked for an adjustment in his contract going forward. In San Carlos, the city attorney services are provided through contract, so Mr. Rubens is not a full-time employee of the city, but rather runs his own legal practice in town, and we contract for those services. His contract is broken into two different pieces: a retainer, which is currently $10,200 per month. In addition to that, we will, on occasion, pay for special legal services or litigation services through his firm, currently at a price of $235 per hour. The adjustments that were requested by Mr. Rubens would increase the $235 per hour special services charges by $15 an hour to $250 per hour, and increase the monthly retainer from $10,200 per month by 2.9% to $10,500 per month. In my estimation and evaluation, the city attorney services and costs to this city are very, very competitive. This is what I would say at or below market in this county. And the contract service city attorney model, which many cities do use, is a very cost-effective model for providing what can be a very expensive service in local government. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Questions for Mr. Maltby? Okay, seeing none. Again, this is not a public hearing, but was anyone wishing to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move adoption of resolution number 2013-129, resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos amending contract for personal services, parentheses, city attorney, close parentheses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
No.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. All right, moving on, item 12, reorganization of the City Council. 12A, City Clerk to announce results of the municipal election held November 5th, 2013.
Good evening, Mayor Grisilli, members of the City Council, Crystal Moy, City Clerk. I'd like to declare the results of the municipal election held November 5th, 2013. The elections were held for the purpose of electing 3 City Council members to the full term of 4 years. The results of the election, as reported by Mark Church, San Mateo County's Chief Elections Officer, are as follows. Matt Grocott, 2,709 votes. Bob Grisilli, 3,312 votes. Michael Corral, 672 votes. Karen Clapper, 2,130 votes. Inga Tico Doherty, 1,040 votes. Cameron Johnson, 3,179 votes. Therefore, Bob Grisilli, Cameron Johnson, and Matt Grocott received the highest number of votes for the office of City Council. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Moy. 12B is adopt a resolution to accept the certificate of Chief Elections Officer and the statement of votes cast in the consolidated municipal, school, and special district election held November 5th, 2013.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move adoption of resolution number 2013-130.
129.
Wait a minute, 129 was the last one.
Sorry. 130.
130, thank you. Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos accepting the certificate of the Chief Elections Officer and the statement of the vote cast in the consolidated municipal, school, and special district election held November 5th, 2013.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. Item 12C, presentation to retiring council member Karen Clapper. So I guess, why don't we do that down there?
Okay.
Thank you. Well, before I even pick this up, why don't you just put that down for a second? I just want to say that we had a situation come up about 18 months ago, and people applied for a job that was possibly only going to be a year or a year and a half long. And we had a number of folks that applied, and Ms. Clapper was selected for that position. She stepped into a place where, well, let's just put it this way. She performed a public service, and she's provided a public service for a year and a half up on that dais. She had served on the Planning Commission before that for how many years, Karen?
3.
3 years, and then was able to move over and provide a service to this community. What I always like is about the public service that folks do in this town. And that's why I really appreciate folks like Karen Clapper who step into a situation. There may be an upside to it, there may not be an upside to it. That doesn't make any difference. Folks apply, there's no glory, perhaps, there's no long term, but they step up because they love this city and they want to do it. And that's why, Karen, I really appreciate all the work that you did. Thank you, Karen, very much. We'll give her why don't you give her the flowers? Because I'll fall over. We have some flowers for you. I better stand on the other side, because otherwise, if I don't, you'll have someone falling over.
Don't break my other ankle.
No, I won't do it this way. But anyway, we have a proclamation that we wrote up for Karen on her retirement from the San Carlos City Council. I'll read a couple of items. She had years of experience on the Residential Design Committee and the Planning Commission, coupled with her background from managing projects and her ability to communicate effectively. And she's made a seamless transition into the City Council. She served on many regional, while on the council, she served on many regional and city ad hoc committees, including the County Library Governing Board, Peninsula Congestion Relief Alliance, San Carlos Transit Village and Wheeler Plaza Studies, and was also the council liaison for the Planning Commission and San Carlos Green. She played an instrumental role in planning the library's interior renovation with the Friends of the San Carlos Library. And she has demonstrated, as I indicated before, the community's best interest in making each and every decision, which engendered widespread respect from her colleagues and high regard among staff and other leaders in the community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the City of San Carlos hereby commends and expresses its sincere appreciation to Karen Clapper for her outstanding service and dedication to the citizens of San Carlos. Proclaim this proclamation is presented with the good wishes of every member of the City Council of the City of San Carlos this 9th day of December 2013. So, thank you very much. And one more. Couple more. Oh, we got a couple more. That's right. We have probably from where's Nicole? Nicole's here? Does she have something for you? Yeah, oh, yeah, they're lined up over there. Okay. So we'll finish this one. This is a clock that we want you to have with an indication, with her name, deep appreciation, dedication to the City of San Carlos, her time on the council, with the city logo on there. So anyway. So I want to call up Brian Perkins first from Congresswoman Jackie Spears' office. So Brian, you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Karen, thank you so much for your work, and it's been a pleasure working with you over the last year and a half, and I hope that you'll be able to make more contributions. This is a statement that Congresswoman Spears entered into the congressional record, and we wish you all the best of luck. Let me just read two sentences. She has been a passionate advocate for our neighborhoods, schools, parks, and public safety. During her time on the City Council, Karen Clapper has worked collaboratively with her colleagues and sought to create a community marked by fiscal prudence and regional relevance. Congratulations, Karen, on your outstanding public service and on your ability to juggle. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Brian. Nicole, you have something too? Here, I'll take that. Oh, sorry.
Hi there, I'm Nicole Fernandez with Senator Jerry Hill's office, and I'm speaking on behalf of Senator Hill and Mario Rendon, who's with Assemblymember Kevin Mullins' office. Karen, we'd just like to thank you for your service to San Carlos and wish you all the best of luck as you continue on the next part of your journey. Let me just read in part this resolution from the California State Legislature, and it says, whereas intelligent and articulate, aware and involved, Karen Clapper is an excellent example of a public-spirited citizen willing to assume the responsibilities of leadership, and she has fulfilled her duties with the integrity and professionalism that is imitated by many but achieved by few. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Mario. So, I guess, go ahead. You can get all those.
Hold these all for me.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is comments by council members. So who would like to start? Mr. Collins?
I'll start. When I think of Karen, I just think of three things. I think of somebody who is prepared, intelligent, and dedicated. I have been very proud and honored to serve on the council with her. I wish she was continuing, but, you know, votes are votes. And so I hope that, Karen, you won't stray too far from us. I think your contributions have been invaluable. I also want to make sure that we thank Rick, her husband, for his support of her. He has been behind her 100%, and you do have to have a spouse that believes in what you're doing. So I just wanted to make sure that we took care of, that we honored him as well. Karen, to me, is a public service servant in the purest sense. She does a lot of things just selflessly. I can't even begin to tell you all the functions and events that she showed up to that she didn't need to show up to. Those are really important. That just shows a person that just cares about the city she lives in. She loves it here. She cares about the current issues. She cares about its future, and I couldn't be more proud to have served with her. So thank you, personally, thank you, Karen, for all of your help and your service to our town.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Collins. Other comments? Mr. Grocott?
Well, I just want to commend Karen on her efforts during the campaign. When I saw you show up at, I forget where it was, but I think it was over on the east side, is, with your foot situation that you had, and I just thought, boy, there's somebody that's really getting after it despite the, physical setback that you had, and I think that shows, especially to an old athlete, that shows something, a spirit of dedication and determination that you have. So something tells me that this, you're going to be stepping off the dais tonight, but it's not going to be the last time. So,
all right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Robert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we're supposed to use last names, but Karen, it's been wonderful working with you. I have to admit there have been numerous occasions where I wish you weren't quite as analytical and persuasive as you've been, but it's always good to no, actually, I think we've agreed on far more things than we've disagreed. But it's always good to have somebody who, as Ron had said, is really there for the community, is really committed to the job, was willing to step up and not only occupy the space in the dais, but take over the role in the community, because that's a very important thing, and it's often unappreciated. I think people don't know how much time it takes to do that, and you clearly dedicated yourself to this town. As I've said before from up here, and I'll say it again, kind of echoing some of Mr. Grocott's last comments, I very much look forward to working with you again. I hope to see you back out on the campaign trail, and that includes in 2015. So if that's what you choose to do, because I think you're an excellent asset for the community.
I made my comments down there, Karen, and I echo all the comments that were made here. In the campaign, it was a good, positive campaign by all of us, and as I said before, you epitomized to me the ultimate in public service and stepping into a situation and doing the job. So thank you very much for that. So I neglected, unfortunately, I had a speaker's card for 12B. Mr. Corral, would you like to speak now? Are you still here? Yes. I apologize for skipping over that. Oh, is it 12? Okay. Well, then we'll wait for 12G. I apologize. We'll wait for 12G then. I'm sorry. Okay. I apologize. All right. Moving on.
Do I get to make some closing
Oh, I'm
comments
sorry.
on
Of
this
course
item?
you do. Of course you do.
I thought maybe
You have 2 minutes.
You're sick of hearing from me?
2 minutes.
Okay.
Just kidding.
This is a true privilege to serve and represent the community of San Carlos. All of the people who live here, who work here, and patronize our businesses. And now at this point, I'm borrowing the words of Brad Lewis. I've been sworn in, I've been sworn at, and I'm being sworn out. And before I go any further, following up on Councilmember Collins' comments, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge my husband, Rick Cutler, for his support and his acceptance of what turned out to be a very time-intensive commitment. And I greatly appreciate his flexibility in dealing with that. It was truly worked out very well. Working in coordination with the city's management team has been a professional pleasure for me. I leave with high expectation for their continued successes and best wishes to each and every one of them, Jeff Maltby, Greg Rubens, Al Savay, Jay Walter, Rebecca Mendenhall, Christine Boland, Crystal Mew, Captain Greg Rothaus, Deputy Fire Chief Stan Maupin, and Chief Jim Skinner. I also want to thank all of our commissioners who have stepped up to serve our community in so many ways. And in doing so, they have helped me to be aware of many broader issues and underlying concerns in our community. I can also say the same of our well-regarded San Carlos School District, its board members, and its superintendent. And one of my special takeaways from serving on the council is having had the opportunity to get to better know our many community organizations. I've always had a strong appreciation for nonprofits and service organizations for the value that they bring to our community. And these groups here in our community have really, really touched my heart, the opportunity to get to know the individuals in them and the work that they have done, including but not limited to our Chamber of Commerce, Lions, Rotary, Kiwanis, the Villagers, San Carlos Green, San Carlos Together, Healthy Cities Tutoring, Sister Cities, Friends of the Adult Community Center, the Education Foundation, and the Parks and Rec Foundation. And lastly but not least, it has been an honor to serve with all of my fellow council members. It's hard to really elaborate in words. I will simply say that I have welcomed your camaraderie in serving the community, and I appreciate the personal and professional talents that you have brought to the council's role in governing the city. As a reluctant taxpayer, a privacy-loving homeowner, a pothole-avoiding car driver, a crosswalk-loving pedestrian, a trash and sewage-producing consumer, and the occasional park stargazer, I wish all of you the best, and I look forward to being here for public comment in the future. I will close with some words, the words of pilot and poet Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. As for the future, your task is not to foresee it, but to enable it. So thank you very much.
So our next item is our city clerk to administer oath of office to the newly elected council members.
So, Mayor Grisilli, if you want to be first?
Actually, I think Mr. Johnson should be
Johnson?
first because then he'll take his place up here. Would that be all right with you, Mr. Johnson?
Okay.
Or why don't you come up
stand
here
on
and then
your
you can sit up.
I'll get you first. Okay. If you could raise your right hand, please. Cameron Johnson, do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
Okay, thank you. You can sign your oath right here.
Please join us up here, Mr. Johnson.
Now present you with your certificate of election.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Raise your right hand, please. Bob Grisilli, do you solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge your duties upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
Thank you. Please sign your oath.
Here? Here.
Mm-hmm. Your certificate of election.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
You raise your right hand, please. Matt Grocott, do you solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You can sign right here. Yeah. Okay. And this is your certificate of election. Congratulations.
The next item on our agenda is comments by newly elected council members. Mr. Johnson, you want to go first?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, fellow members of the City Council, it is a great honor to have earned the trust of the residents of San Carlos and to join you tonight as a member of the City Council. Our city is a unique and special place that combines a great quality of life, a strong community, and outstanding job opportunities for our residents. The growth of the Silicon Valley economy has been changing our city, is changing our region, and will continue to change our region for years to come. And it brings with it new opportunities and new challenges. We have talented, young, new residents moving to town every day. They're drawn by great schools and job opportunities. They're coming to start their families and pursue their dreams. And new businesses are springing up every day, and our downtown has never been more vibrant than it is today. But at the same time, our streets are getting clogged with traffic. It's hard to find a place to park. And housing is becoming increasingly unaffordable to many members of our community. And our city revenue has not kept pace with the demand for many city services. So I see our central challenge is to navigate these changes, to try to make wise decisions with forethought, to maintain this delicate balance between economic opportunity and an outstanding quality of life. We should seek to capture as much of our region's economic growth as possible, but at the same time protect our small town feel and enhance and grow our community. So as your city councilman for the next 4 years, I just want to talk about a couple of my goals. Number one, to ensure the long-term fiscal stability of our city. Number two, to increase economic development in ways that are consistent with our community values to generate more revenue to invest in quality of life improvements. Those investments, I think, should be in public safety, our parks, and upgrades to our basic infrastructure. I want to maintain a positive and productive working relationship with our school district and do everything that I can to improve the quality of education and recreational opportunities for young people. And I want to increase the effectiveness, responsiveness, and transparency of our city government and do whatever I can to make myself accessible to the public. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who supported me in my election efforts, many of whom are in the audience tonight. I want to thank my mother, who's here tonight, who taught me the importance of getting to know your neighbors and being involved in your community. I want to thank my wife, Selena, for her love and support, and without whom I would not be here and I could not do this. And I want to thank everyone in the city of San Carlos for the opportunity to serve. I'm grateful for your trust, and I'm excited to get to work. Thank you.
Mr. Grocott, comments?
These are our only comments, or
We get
are comments about?
We get another shot at the end, assuming the new mayor lets you talk, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just reserve my comments for then.
All right.
That's
All right. Well, I'll make a couple of comments here relative, certainly first to the election. I'd like to thank the citizens of San Carlos for returning me to office. I felt that in the last 8 years, I've tried to do the best I could for this city. I've lived here 30 years. Tried to listen to all sides and tried to make the right decision. I'm sure there are people out there that would say I haven't made all the right decisions, but I guess through the election, most people thought I did. I'd like to thank the other candidates that were in the election, certainly Mr. Johnson, Mr. Grocott, Mr. Corral is here, Ms. Teagle-Doherty, Ms. Clapper. As usual, at least the way I've been around here for a number of years, it was a very positive campaign, and that's the way it should be in a town like ours that has a lot of positive things going for it. I think all the folks that ran had their ideas of how they wanted to help the city, not help themselves, and I think that's why this is a wonderful place to live. I congratulate Mr. Johnson and welcome him to the dais, and look forward to his comments. I also congratulate Mr. Grocott for winning for a fourth time, which is getting close to a record, if it's not already tying a record in this city. And I look forward to working with him also, as well as Mr. Collins and Mr. Olbert. So I wanted to, well, I guess I'll just talk about that. I'll have one more shot in I, and it'll be short at that end. But thank you again for all the support of the folks who voted for me, and thank you to all the citizens that are involved in San Carlos and make it the great place that it is to live. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Corral, before 12G. Sorry again to keep you waiting.
Well, good evening, council members, Mayor Grisilli, and our newest council member, Cameron. It's a pleasure running with you. I just wanted to make some comments before the nominations for mayor are made. Our mayor should be looked up to. Our mayor should be respected and display the qualities of an honorable person, a statesman, and a patriot. And to the public, he will be the face of San Carlos, the representative of us and our city. Our vice mayor has traditionally become our next mayor without fail, and in most cases it makes sense. But being untraditional is okay. Our current vice mayor is not the council member who should receive this honor, and I will tell you why. Mark Olbert has shown over his past 2 years on the council that he is manipulative and displays troubling selfishness when acting for the city. We've recently seen this during our 2013 city council campaign. First, Mark Olbert felt it appropriate to offer to interview each candidate for his endorsement. I declined his offer because I was not seeking endorsements for my campaign. However, after he made his endorsement choices public, he felt it necessary in a letter to the editor of the Mercury News to not only reaffirm his choices by name, but to offer a reason why voters should not vote for the other three candidates. While every candidate ran an honest and respectful campaign, Mark Olbert chose to get involved, labeling and alienating some of the candidates from the public. I think many would agree, for a sitting council member and our vice mayor, that this is a display of inappropriate behavior and very poor judgment. Absent of any substance whatsoever in this letter, the reason he gave for cautioning voters was that the three others, including Inga Teagle-Doherty, a former San Carlos council member and mayor, and Matt Grocott, after being elected to 3 terms on the council and also serving as our mayor, were not able to collaborate with the school district. Mark, I'm going to quote from your letter. After spending a decade on the school board before being elected to the council, I am keenly aware of the opportunities for collaboration between our two public agencies. But for it to happen, we need leaders who understand we are one community. This November, I hope all San Carlos voters will cast ballots in both the council and board elections and choose candidates who want to work together. By bridging the divide between the city and the district, we can make San Carlos even better than it already is. While I am not aware of a divide between the city and the school district, Mark Olbert suggests that it will be minimized by electing his choices. And after the votes were counted, has Mark Olbert paved a way for collaboration with Matt Grocott? Collaborative, Mr. Olbert?
Mr. Corral, normally it's two minutes. You're already at 3. Do you have a lot more?
I ask that you indulge me to finish my...
I'll give you another minute and a half.
Sat through a lot of diatribes on that dais. I don't see why I shouldn't be allowed to finish.
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm still the mayor. You have another. Now it's down to a minute.
From a personal standpoint, Mark Olbert is the reason I am no longer serving on our planning commission. After being appointed by the city council, I served a remaining term of 1+ years without so much as any objection or concern being voiced to me by any council member until Mark Olbert. When up for reappointment, and in spite of Matt Grocott and Karen Clapper's objections, Mr. Olbert was able to garner the support of 2 other council members in securing I was not reappointed. In spite of Planning Commissioner Scott Marshers being reappointed at that same meeting, Mr. Olbert stated publicly that he wanted to give others a chance to serve. Others. However, because of a recent rezoning issue before the Planning Commission in a news article and to my face, Mark stated that he did not believe I, quote, could play the heavy, unquote, when making difficult decisions. So without cause, I was not reappointed, and Mark Olbert accomplishes his agenda to further exclude a citizen he does not personally agree with from serving this city. Again, collaborative, Mr. Olbert. Do you want to work together, Mr. Olbert? I'd like to finish this if I can, but if I can't, I would just like to close in saying, I ask the other 4 council members and the citizens of San Carlos, is this the type of petty and childish behavior you want from your mayor? Will you think for a moment before casually moving a vice mayor to this distinguished honor? After being your neighbor, Mark, for 10 years, supporting you in your 2011 city council run, and observing your public behavior these past 2, I am no longer fooled by it. I hope the rest of the city sees your motives for what they are. Mark Olbert is not worthy to serve as our next mayor of San Carlos, and you are doing this city a disservice if you choose to bestow this honor upon him. Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is for call nominations for mayor. It's open now. Do I have a nomination for mayor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Previous comments notwithstanding, I would like to place into the nomination the name of Mark Olbert. I've had the opportunity to serve with him for the last 2 years. I heard a lot of things on the campaign trail 2 years ago from people about Mr. Olbert, and my experience with him has been the opposite. So I think you should not judge somebody based on a small sample size. I've spent now 2 years on the council with 4 of the 5 people up here. And I think you have to look at the whole package. And I can't think of another council member that has the time and spends the time, taking the time to learn what the issues are and really understand them. He and I have been on the opposite sides of several issues. We've been on the same sides of several issues. He has a lot of experience, and I think it would be the appropriate thing to do, and I fully support nominating him for mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we need a vote on this, Mr. Rubens?
Close the nominations.
We typically close the nominations and then
make
vote.
a motion to close the nominations. Is there a motion to close?
Can I make the motion to close?
Yeah.
I make my motion. I move that we close the nomination.
Is there a second?
I second.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now we have a vote? Okay.
Do we have any discussion?
we can have discussion. Certainly, Mr. Grocott, absolutely.
I would just, I saw while Mr. Corral was making his comments, the faces of the crowd out here, because I have that vantage point. And I would just say to those who smirk and don't respect what Mr. Corral said or did, put yourself in Mr. Corral's shoes, put yourself in my shoes. Think about the situation, think about the courage, I would say, it takes to come before an audience and speak your mind and give your opinion on something, knowing probably very well that you're going to be looked upon in perhaps a negative way. It's not easy to do. Myself, I've been in the same situation years ago in '99 when I ran a campaign, and some things went on there, and I was very uncomfortable with it, and I came to the council meeting and said something about that situation. And so I know from experience it's not comfortable to do, it's not easy to do, and so I commend Mr. Corral for standing up for what he thinks and speaking his mind. I too will echo his comments because I was one of those candidates that was mentioned in the letter by absence, I would say. Mr. Olbert, I have been on this council for 3 terms, and during my time on the council, I've served with Healthy Cities as a tutor. When I was the mayor, anytime the school district required it or asked of the mayor to be in attendance at one of their events, I went, and not just with the school district, but with anything. I saw that as my role as the mayor. It's important to do. I support the school district. I don't usually go to the events like the SCEF events. I've been to one, and I'll just simply tell you my family budget does not allow me to attend such events and do those kinds of things. I have to pick and choose where I go and the kind of functions I attend. Generally, I go to things like that deal with the Lions Club. But I'll close with this. Again, I've been on the council for as many years as I have, for 3 terms. And during that time, of course, I saw fellow council members endorse candidates for council. There's nothing wrong with that. It's done all the time. I think attaching your name to a candidate's campaign is perfectly fine. It's also perfectly fine to go to functions and talk to people who ask of you, what do you think about this person, and what do you think about them as a candidate, or so forth. Or that's all well and good, but I think we should be very careful about writing letters to the editor and putting things in writing about about the candidates. You have to serve with these people, no matter who gets elected. You have to serve with them, and you need to collaborate, and it's adds a little poison to the water when you write a letter to the editor and expound upon your feelings and belief about the candidates. And it's also very difficult for a candidate to retort or write anything back. Sometimes that is looked at, much like Mr. Corral's comments were tonight by some, as being petty. Well, it's not petty, but it's a difficult thing to do and have it seen correctly. So I'm not directing these comments necessarily to Mr. Olbert, but to the council as a whole, because for years, like I said, in my service on council, I'd seen candidates be endorsed by fellow council members. I'd never seen it expounded upon with a letter to the editor, and I think we ought to think about that as a council, not that we can legally bind somebody to what they can and can't do, but just as a matter of gentlemen and gentleman's agreement, if you will, that we don't go that far. Like I said, I think it poisons the water. So I'll support you in my vote for the mayor. I'm not going to hold it against you, but I just wanted to have the opportunity to make that word of caution for the future. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. Congratulations, Mark. Thank you. I will. Matt, you want to move to this seat, or you want me to just change places?
I'll take the end if you want. I was going to stay here. I don't know. Where do I need to be?
Well, we can move if you want later. It's my point.
Make sure you move your cup so you don't, cross-contaminate each other.
What I'm saying is later on, if you want to move over, I'll move over.
Mark? Councilmember Obert, if you want to come down and take your oath.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, there is that formality. Thank you.
Raise your right hand, please. Mark Obert, do you solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sign right there. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want this or your.
Actually, I think we have the computer still working.
Okay.
Thank you. It's always good to know we have a backup. So the next item on the agenda is 12H, calling for nominations for vice mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Ron Collins for vice mayor.
Very good. Is there a second?
A second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or commentary or public speaker that wishes to comment on this? Well, seeing none, before we call for the roll, I will just say, Mr. Collins, Ron, that I very much look forward to working with you in your capacity as vice mayor.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, you need to close nominations.
We will close. Do I have a motion to close?
I'll make a motion to
nominations?
close the nominations.
Is there a second?
A second?
Okay. All in favor of closing the nominations?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll repeat my comments without actually repeating them now that they're in the proper place. So, roll call, please.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Groscut?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Obert?
Yes. All right. The last item before we adjourn is comments by the mayor and council members. So I think what I will do is open this up for council member comments, and I'll take the tail end position. Any comments that people would like to make? I know there were some folks who said that they were going to hold their comments until later, and now's the time.
No?
Mr. Groscut?
Okay. Well, sorry on that earlier item. I read that to be the newly elected council members, and I saw myself as a re-elected council member, so I didn't have any comments for that item. But I did, I came tonight with, I don't know what to call it. I don't want to call it melancholy necessarily, but just a far different feeling than I have had in the past of when I've been elected to office and re-elected. And by the way, before I don't forget or whatever, similar to what Mr. Grisilli said and Mr. Johnson said about the people that support you during your campaign and help you out, I certainly want to offer my thanks to all those people. There were times where people did things that I was a little bit shocked, I guess, or humbled, or you just don't think of it that people would step forward and do the things that they do. And there were also times that I attended some of our forums and events where we knew somebody was going to receive an endorsement and walk out with a check. And there were a couple of times where, frankly, I opened the envelope and looked at the check and thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe somebody's willing to put that kind of financial contribution towards my campaign. And I was very thankful. I see one person sitting in the audience right now that's from an organization that supported my campaign. And frankly, it's humbling to get that kind of support. So certainly appreciate that, and I would be remiss if I didn't say, I know they're not here tonight, but they're probably watching at home because they always tell me the next day that they watch the council meeting on TV. But if folks know the Montalbanos, Mary Montalbano was my treasurer, and they are longtime residents of San Carlos and good people, and I truly appreciated their support during the campaign. They're of a certain age that, you know, is like having your mom around helping you out, is the only way I can put it. But so that's the campaign issue. But the thing that I came somewhat with a heavy heart about is this thing that we do with the oath, quite frankly, because I really wonder how seriously we take it. We make an oath. I actually went to the city clerk and I said, what would happen theoretically if one of us stood up there and raised our right hand and then when it came time said no? And she said, I don't know. It's never been done. And theoretically, I could go ask some questions and find out for you, which she did. And it turns out, if I understood her answer correctly, it's simply a misdemeanor. So pay the fine and move on, I guess. I don't know. It is stated in the state constitution that one will take an oath before they take office. But the reason it kind of bothers me, again, is because we don't always, in elected office, seem to take it seriously. And actually, I came prepared tonight. I've got a gift for everybody up here on the dais, because I've brought this up before when I've been up here on certain issues. And so each of you can take one of these copies. These are the U.S. Constitution. It also has just a little booklet. And, you know, it's amazing, folks. We write all kinds of laws and things these days, and none of them fit in a booklet this size. But this is what was done in the very beginning when we created our current government, our federal government. And I really, I wrestled with the idea of even saying no because I respect this document so much. It's this document that puts a corral. What it does is it puts a corral around government and says, within these bounds is where you will do your work. Now, the state constitution is a little different, and it opens up, if you read the state constitution from 1849, it opens up with some of the things that are actually in the Bill of Rights, that these things are recognized for each person. And then it you know, goes into how the government should be formed and how it should function and how it can tax and how the courts are set up. And a lot of it, the state constitution is just, this is the recipe for how we're going to have government. And then it you know, it gets into other things. Now, our state, sorry to give a civics lesson here, but this is important to me. The state constitution actually is a document that's much more easily amended than this one. And so it has been amended many times. To me, it's a bit of a plate of spaghetti to get through the thing and really understand what's being said and what's going on there. But bottom line, both constitutions are intended to protect the individual. And I think that's so important. And that's why I bring it up on occasion up here. I think, honestly, there's been times where, in my opinion, we've made the mistake of going over bounds. And in one particular case, I can remember when we were discussing the bag ban and the government having the audacity to tell somebody, this may be your property that's in your store, but for it to leave your store, you have to charge a minimum price of 10 cents. And in the future, we're going to change it to 25 cents. So it takes away that shop owner's freedom to choose that they want to do this as a courteous gesture to their customer, or now they have to do it. And the government's going to come in and see how many bags you had coming in and how many you had going out and make sure that you charge for every one of those. And when I see things like that happening, it makes me want to cry, because I question, do we live in the country that wrote this document anymore? And it really bothers me. I know it's only 10 cents, folks, but it's a move towards a direction. And to me, it's a move out of bounds, and we ought not to be there. So those are my comments tonight, because that's what's on my heart, and that's what is really matters to me. And that's when I sit up here, that's one of the first things I look to when we consider things is this document, and on occasion I go online and I look at the state constitution and see what it says. My last comment is going to be this. We have this terrible impression that this is a complex document and it takes scholars to understand it. You have to have the Supreme Court to make a judgment. Or no, you don't. Do you know that this document was easily understood by Abraham Lincoln, who went to a one-room schoolhouse as a kid and only made it to, I think, something that would be equivalent of about 6th or 7th grade, taught himself to read, and he could understand this and then be president of the United States and abide by it? It's not a hard document to understand, and if you haven't read it, I really suggest sit down one night, and in about 40 minutes, you can easily get through the whole thing, and then you'll know what are the bounds of your government, and it's a good exercise. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grocott. Mr. Grisilli.
Mr. Mayor, the only real comments I said before about the election and about thank you for the support and so on. I just look forward to Mr. Johnson joining the group, a different perspective, a younger perspective. And I look forward to working with my colleagues, and we're not always going to agree, as Mr. Grocott and I sometimes are on opposite sides of the issue, but sometimes we're on the same side of the issue. And that's the way I think it should be, because we don't have this group and that group up here voting the same way. We all look at it independently in certain ways, and I think that's better for the city of San Carlos. And so again, I just look forward to working with everyone up here and making sure that we try to do the best we can for the citizens of San Carlos. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Grisilli. Mr. Johnson?
I guess the only thing I would add is to echo the comments said before that it was a great campaign, a well fought campaign, and to extend my congratulations to Mr. Grocott and to Mr. Grisilli, and to say that I'm looking forward to working with all of you gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
I think we would be remiss without some comments about the last several months of our now former mayor's leadership. I have felt very comfortable with having Mr. Grisilli as our mayor. I think he's done an outstanding job. He might have taken a little bit of fire from people who were impatient with him or felt he was impatient with the public, but I just think he's done a great job. And I wanted to personally say that to you, Bob. I think I very much admire and respect you, and Mr. Olbert, you have big shoes to fill. So, and also want to thank my fellow council members for choosing me as a vice mayor. Hope I won't disappoint you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins, although that was a cheap shot about the shoes because I have abnormally small feet. My whole family does. That's okay. Actually, before I get into my comments that I wrote out because I wanted to make sure I said them correctly, I do want to thank Mr. Grocott for this as well. I will. I have some copies of it already, but this is actually somewhat smaller and more portable, which is good. And Mr. Grisilli, I would like to further Mr. Collins' comments in saying that I very much always enjoyed watching you in action. It is a difficult job to fulfill. I think you did it with grace and style. And I will also mention that, while it may not have always been apparent in the audience, I always appreciated the somewhat dry sense of humor you brought to it on occasion because I think it's important. Thank you for all your work in that regard. And please, do not hesitate to play parliamentarian if I forget to do something. So let me start by thanking my colleagues for giving me the chance to be mayor. I very much appreciate the opportunity. I've spoken many times of what I call the fundamental challenge for elected officials. Our job is to represent the interests and views, even in a small town like San Carlos, of literally thousands of people. On the surface, that would seem to be an impossible task. But the conundrum can be resolved if all of us, decision makers and voters alike, remember one simple thing. We are more than just individuals. We are always part of a broader community, and we need to support each other. My dad used to say golf was the silliest sport ever invented, grown men chasing a small ball around while getting sunburned. Yet he was a staunch advocate for all of that. He was a staunch advocate for public golf courses because he knew supporting things he didn't value but which others did was part of what made a community work. Doing unto others as you would have them do unto you is as important in politics as it is in personal relationships. Of course, allocating limited resources and balancing conflicting priorities will always be a challenge for any public agency. We must, after all, inevitably choose among different ideas. But we should do so without judging the people espousing them. Judge not, that ye be not judged, reminds us that none of us have all the answers. We need to respect each other even as we make difficult choices. We also need to recognize it is not up to each of us individually to decide what the law is. We can have opinions, strong ones, but being part of a community means we honor the rules defined by that community. We can and should work vigorously to change laws with which we disagree. But if we fail to uphold the rule of law, we open the door, however slightly, to either tyranny or the war of all against all, neither of which is a particularly desirable outcome. I'm glad to say that I think this council generally understands all these points. One of my goals as mayor is to make sure that when the baton gets passed off to the next person, that same observation will still be true. The journey we are taking together as a community never ends because that more perfect union, never defined, cannot be realized. The trip itself is, and always will be, its own reward. I look forward to working with my colleagues and with staff over the next year as we help San Carlos to be all it can be. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting.